Hi, I'm Jeff Gianola, and welcome to Oregon's Harvest, a show that celebrates Oregon agriculture. In this episode, we're talking about the amazing food raised, grown, and harvested right here in Oregon. You'll see where it comes from and meet the people behind it. Our first story takes us to the eastern side of the state, far beyond Mount Hood, where ranchers are making it easier than ever for you to feed healthy, locally raised beef to your family. Our first stop is a little town called Seneca, Oregon. It's 289 miles from downtown Portland on the road between Canyon City and Burns. It may not look like much, but it has a lot of history. Many of the local families have been making their living here since the gold rush days. We met up with Jack Southworth, owner and manager of Southworth Ranch, for a tour of his property.
One of the ways our ranch started was they were a stagecoach stop.
He drove us into an area called Bear Valley to see his operation. Jack has been doing this his whole life, and his family even longer. Great-grandfather came to Oregon in 1862 for the Canyon City Gold Rush. Over the years, the family started a homestead and a lumber mill before settling into life as cattle ranchers. Jack now runs the family ranch, and his philosophy on raising cattle is eye-opening.
You think of us as being a cattle ranch, right? Yes, how many cattle we have and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the reality is we're a grass ranch. The cattle are the way to take this resource and make it into a saleable product. And so for us, maximizing on a sustainable basis the level of grass production on this ranch is our job number one.
And he does a great job of it. Cattle is one of the top commodities in Oregon. For lots of the local families, it's been their livelihood for more than a century.
I'm the sixth generation with my family's ranch. Oh, it's nice to be able to work with animals all day long, and everything you're doing is for the betterment of that animal. The way you manage the grass and the water, and it just comes full circle all the time.
After a tour of his ranch, Jack Southworth took us to meet one of his neighbors, Alec Oliver, who runs another ranch here in Seneca.
This is the J.C. Oliver Inc. Ranch. I'm the fifth generation here. My great-great-grandfather came over from the Azore Islands of Portugal. He kind of came over following the gold rush, and I was born into this, and that's all I wanted to do since day one. Is I wanted to be a rancher. I wanted to take this over and continue the legacy.
He may be young, but Alec is an open book when it comes to ranching.
The ranching community is so strong and so supportive of one another that it's incredible on how good the older generations are on teaching younger folks coming up.
We asked Jack and Alec what an average day on their ranches is like. They said it all depends on the season and the weather.
It's nice to have the flexibility to look outside and say, you know, it's going to cool off today. Let's take advantage of that cooler weather and maybe move cattle while it's cool and not stress them when it's hot, or if it's real hot, let's do something. Let's go work on some water. Let's irrigate a little bit.
There's always something to do, from taking care of the spring calves to feeding them through the harsh winters and managing the grasslands in the spring.
When we move cows, we're not just moving cows, as we're training those cows how to move, how to be handled.
Both these men know the business inside and out, and they know the land just as well as they know the animals. And they'll go deep if you ask.
What did we achieve here? We took a bite and we told the grass plant it's been bitten, and so the roots down the ground, some of those roots died off. Those roots dying off provide food for microorganisms in the soil, which enriches the soil. There's still good soil moisture in the ground. We're going to get regrowth on this.
While the day-to-day work on the ranch is important, both Jack and Alec have their eye on the big picture.
Our purpose here is to manage grass, livestock, and people in a way that is good for the environment, good for the cattle, and good for the people here on this ranch. And if we can do that in a way that sustains the land and improves it, is good for the cattle, treats them with respect and in a gentle manner, and it's good for the people that our lives have meaning and purpose beyond the day-to-day work of this ranch, then that's the win-win-win that we're after.
One of the people benefiting from the ranches, cowboy Jake Taylor. We ran into him and his horse Chuck while they were out working. Jake trained as a teacher and lived in Portland for a while. But for him, the quality of life out here can't be beat.
I've done a lot of other different things, but this is, and Alec offered me a job being out here. Didn't have to think about it very long. Grow up doing this stuff, it's just a lifestyle, You can make money doing other things, but my wife loves it, my kids love it.
This may be the perfect life for cowboy Jake, but ranching has some drawbacks. The biggest, keeping a steady income. When you're far from the big city, it's hard to stay connected to your customers, and even harder to sell your animals at a reliable price.
And when we were just selling beef on the generic market, a cattle buyer would come by in the fall, or several cattle buyers, and you'd take the best bid. And you might make money and you might not. You had no control over it.
Eventually, ranchers across Oregon realized they all have the same problem, and it was time to do something about it. So they teamed up and formed a co-op called Oregon Country Beef.
There are ranchers in Oregon, Washington, Northern California that have banded together to supply whole foods and new seasons. And Oregon Country Beef is different primarily because the rancher owns the meat all the way to the end consumer.
This means the profit goes straight to the local ranchers and their families rather than a big corporation. The food and the money stay right here in the Pacific Northwest, and they've all agreed to adhere to the highest standards.
The animals are never given hormones of any kind, growth-promoting hormones of any kind. They're raised without the use of antibiotics. We adhere to standards that were put together by the Global Animal Partnership.
26 pages of standards that are strictly followed by every rancher in the co-op to make sure all the animals live the most humane life possible. And one of the most important ways to keep the animals healthy is taking care of the land.
We want clean water leaving our ranches. We want responsible use of water on our ranches. We want an abundance of wildlife, the appropriate species for that ecosystem. We want primarily perennial plants because they're more sustainable long term. We want clean air. We want open spaces.
For Oregon ranchers, Oregon Country Beef is a win-win. Their land and values are supported, and it's given them the financial stability they need.
It's really allowed me to be able to step out and buy more cows of my own, to be able to start my own business, knowing that I'm going to have the stability of that stable pricing for years to come that I can budget on.
Then I can plan. I can sit down at the laptop and make a budget. I can sit down at the laptop and make a grazing plan.
What's also rewarding for the ranchers in the Country Natural Beef Co-op is their relationship with the consumers. In fact, they often travel to Portland to directly talk with consumers in stores where they sell their beef, like here at Whole Foods Market.
Well, I'm one of the ranchers that raises the beef for Whole Foods.
Customers seem to love it, and Dan Barnhart, a rancher from Philomath, says he knows why.
Our beef tastes good, and then when they hear the story that we are taking care of things, they like that, and we have a very loyal following of customers.
It definitely gives me peace of mind to know that the meat I'm eating was raised in a sustainable way.
And then what really kind of creates the full circle in for us producing our beef is when the customer thanks us for that, genuinely from their heart, that they care about what we're doing, they care about what they're eating. It's really good.
Meanwhile, back on the ranch in Seneca, they're moving the cattle again. Keeping the cows and their calves fed and getting them ready to enter the Oregon Country Beef program.
I mean, we enjoy raising it as much as anybody enjoys eating it.
They may be working hundreds of miles away from their customers at the Whole Foods in Portland, but Jack says the divide isn't as big as you think.
People talk about an urban-rural divide in Oregon. I think that's wrong. I think there's an urban-rural need for each other in Oregon. We can't all live in urban areas, but the rural areas need those people in the urban areas.
Jack and Alec continue the work their family started generations ago, growing healthy animals, bettering their community, and preserving the land that we all love.
I appreciate nothing more than riding a horse and watching the ground squirrels and the neotropical migrant songbirds and the waterfowl and the big game. And just being part of that nature is so rewarding.
Coming up next, we're headed north from the ranches in Seneca to the Columbia Basin to show you why some of the best minds at Oregon State University are gathered there to study potatoes.
Do you know that 39% of all the farmers and ranchers in Oregon are women? That's 8% higher than the national average, and another great reason we can be proud to call Oregon home.
Welcome back to Oregon's Harvest. You know, when most people think of potatoes, they think of Idaho, not Oregon. But potatoes are big business here. So we're headed to Hermiston, where farmers there say the land is absolutely perfect for growing potatoes.
You're overlooking the Columbia River. It's a region we call the Southern Columbia Basin.
Most people may not associate Oregon with potatoes, but Hermiston farmers like Troy Betts of Bud Rich Farms say the conditions here are nearly perfect for a great crop.
A soil, kind of sandy loam that's really conducive to a good quality potato. We got long growing days.
In fact, Oregon grows more potatoes per acre than any place else in the world, including Idaho. And they've been an important crop to this state for a long time. When the first settlers arrived at Fort Vancouver, Commander McLaughlin added them into his soldiers' diet to prevent scurvy, because potatoes are a great source of vitamin C. Then during the gold rush, potatoes fetched a high price in California. So Oregon farmers cashed in, shipping them by wagon train down to San Francisco. But things have changed a lot since then. Now, high-tech machinery like this GPS-guided tractor is the way of life in Hermiston.
These are the satellites it's hitting in outer space.
Bud Rich Farm is a family operation, so Troy and his kids gave us a tour before introducing us to his father, who's been farming here since the 1950s.
So when we first moved here, there was one other potato grower. We started, and there was probably less than 2,000 acres of potatoes. In about 4 years, there was 30,000 acres of potatoes.
Richard Betts says that back in the old days, all they needed was a shovel and a strong back, but now everything is automated.
I can't even turn our glue machine on, for Christ's sake.
Now international sales are big business. In fact, 25% of all French fries exported from the United States come from Oregon. But Bud Rich Farms doesn't sell French fries. They grow fresh potatoes and sometimes potato chips.
These potatoes that you've seen being harvested here today will be turned into a potato chip by this time tomorrow.
Troy says that while their primary crop is potatoes, in order to grow the best potatoes possible, they have to rotate their crops a lot.
Our common rotation crops are alfalfa hay, wheat, sweet corn, grass seed.
Here's how the potato business works. Farmers buy seed potatoes, cut them up, and plant them during the spring. They're harvested from July through October. Some are sent for processing, others into cold storage. The rest of the year, potatoes are washed, sorted for size, shape, and appearance, before being bagged for the grocery store. The operation here is fairly simple, but making a profit each year is not easy.
You know, our margins in agriculture are like almost any business, I think. Our costs have escalated much quicker than we're able to pass margins on.
Potato prices have been fairly stable over the years, while the cost to grow them keeps going up. But there is help on the horizon.
This is the potato station.
Just 3 miles down the road, a team of Oregon State University researchers have dedicated their careers to potatoes.
We have more faculty working on potatoes than anywhere else you might go.
Why are potatoes so important? Because they're easy to store and rich in vitamins, making them critical in the fight against hunger.
If you look at crops worldwide that have nutritional importance, rice, corn, potatoes.
The researchers here study plant breeding, pest management, and disease control, with two goals: making the potato more nutritious and reducing farmers' need for fertilizers and pesticides.
It makes sense to reduce our reliance on chemistry because it costs growers money and it might have a negative impact on the environment. So what we're doing here is to actually kill two birds at once: costs and environmental harm.
That is good news for potato farmers around the world and here in Oregon, where they're fighting to stay competitive in the marketplace.
American agriculture is getting less farmers and more corporations.
But thanks to developments from researchers at Oregon State and huge changes in technology, the Betts family is still in the game, with the fourth generation just starting to learn the potato ropes.
I appreciate that everyone above me has put in so much hard work, and I hope to help continue and grow that.
Coming up next, we're headed west to a coastal community so innovative with its food, it's becoming world famous.
Did you know that 326,000 jobs in Oregon are connected to agriculture? These jobs support Oregon families and together contribute $50 billion to Oregon's economy, making agriculture one of the top industries in Oregon. So keep eating local.
Welcome back to Oregon's Harvest. So far, we visited ranchers way out in eastern Oregon and potato farmers in the Columbia Basin, both far from Oregon's bustling tourism industry. But our next stop is very different. We're taking you to a farming community attracting visitors from around the world. Tillamook County is a world-class destination for visitors. Gorgeous views, beautiful beaches, and plentiful biking, hiking, and kayaking, making it easy to see why people flock here for vacation. But there's another reason: food. Tillamook's cheddar cheese is world famous. Just ask one of their dairy farmers.
When my wife and I were on our honeymoon over in Europe, they'd ask where we were from, and so we'd say Tillamook, and they'd go, "Oh man, we love your cheese."
Their cheese factory alone attracts 1.3 million visitors to the coast each year. But cheddar is not the only showstopper.
Our focus is to make the best salt on the planet.
Ben Jacobson has been harvesting salt in Netarts Bay for 6 years now. After testing the waters up and down the west coast, he says this little bay may have the best salt in the world. The water is clean, high in salinity, and most importantly, tons of clams and oysters, which act as natural filters. Jacobson's salt is thriving, and it shows.
And we have some of the best chefs in America that use our salt.
Just up the road from Netarts Bay is a beer brewer with an equally impressive reputation.
At this point, I think half our customer base travels from out of state to drink our beer and to take some bottles home.
What makes DeGard Brewing different from every other Oregon microbrew is their unusual process. Instead of adding yeast to their beers, they leave the lid off and natural yeasts in the air do the work.
The beer we make would be very different 50 miles up the coast, 50 miles down the coast, or 50 miles inland.
DeGard Beer is pushing the envelope, and they're just one of many. Local fishermen are bypassing traditional distributors to get the morning catch straight to the best chef in town.
We're working with smaller restaurants. When the boat hits, they'll change their menu on the fly, and they are serving it within hours.
And in the case of this food cart, you could be eating a fish taco by lunch. The farmers, producers, and fishing community are thankful for the perfect climate, soils, and water that help them create some of the best foods in the world. Their products are enjoyed all over the world, but a true Oregon agriculture experience can best be enjoyed right here in Tillamook, Oregon.
It's just a wonderful place to have agriculture.
Well, so far we've met farmers, ranchers, fishermen, and brewers. Now we're going to talk with an expert on Oregon agriculture on how you can help these Oregon producers who are vital to our economy.
Hi, I'm Alexis Taylor. I'm the director of the Oregon Department of Agriculture. My background really starts, I grew up on a farm in Iowa. It's a pretty standard Iowa farm. We grew corn and soybeans, and we had a small cattle operation. It's been in my family for 158 years this year, so agriculture is something that I've done my entire life. One of the things I love about Oregon is our wide open spaces, and oftentimes people think that they're just there, but they're not. That wide open space is farmland, it's grasslands for cattle. It's really tied to agriculture, and that's so exciting that we have these amazing outdoor spaces, and agriculture is really contributing to that landscape. Agriculture is important to Oregon because it's our second largest sector. 1 in 16 jobs are tied to agriculture in the state. Having a strong agricultural sector really means having a strong economy in the whole state. Well, I think where you spend your money is directly going to impact Oregon's economy. Really, for every dollar you're spending, that's allowing those small businessmen and women to hire more people and to really create more jobs. It's really easy to support local agriculture here in Oregon throughout the whole year because of the seasonality we have. You can start off in the winter buying Dungeness crab from the coast, moving into the spring, some of the leafy greens that come on early, Hood River strawberries in the middle of summer, and then finishing off with pumpkins and squash for the fall. But also in the winter, so many of our fresh fruits and vegetable products are getting processed and getting, frozen, and you can buy those locally right from the grocery store. Everybody can do something. You can look for it at your local grocery store or farmers markets. Maybe visit a farmers market every month. We have over 100 in the state. You can ask for it if you're out to eat at a restaurant. See if they have some seafood from the coast or some local beef from Eastern Oregon. Driving that demand and saying it's really important to you as a consumer is going to make it important to the people who are purchasing from our farmers, fishers, and ranchers. Not everyone can live in Portland. Not everyone wants to live in Portland. And so being able to keep strong agricultural economies, strong agricultural communities allows kind of that diversity that is so amazing about Oregon. Success is really farmers, fishers, and ranchers being able to live in their rural communities, make a living, and then Oregon consumers being able to find affordable, healthy food year-round.
That's all for Oregon's Harvest. I hope it's helped you get to know the people, land, and animals that are feeding this state. Until next time, I'm Jeff Gianola. Thanks for watching.
Did you know that there are 35,000 farms and ranches throughout Oregon? And more than 96% of those are family-run. Just another reason we can be proud to call Oregon home, and another great reason to keep eating local.
Oregon's Harvest, sponsored by Oregon Country Beef, the Oregon Potato Commission, and Tillamook Coast Tourism.